Hey there, if you're new. My name is Chloe. I am Singaporean Indonesian and I did get accepted to Oxford PPE, which means I did pass the TSA. I already made a TSA video about how to prepare for it and I will link that down below, but you can just find it on my channel. This one is just going to be up at the writing section, but I'm also going to include where I got all of the past papers. People have kept asking me to email them, which is also what I asked them to do. But honestly, all you need to go is just go on Google and Google it, and it is there. But anyways, I will link both of them down below. Be sure to check that out. Drop a comment, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you want. Let's get on with the video. Alright, point being, there are only a couple of things that you really need to know. You pick one question. It's around 30 minutes. They're testing critical thinking, logic, open perspectives, and they're testing your writing articulation. These three things you can demonstrate through your points, right? Like your physical arguments. Usually the TSA will give you 3 or 4 prompts for you to pick. So this video is going to be a couple of parts. It's going to be the general portion, how to pick a prompt, how you write that prompt, and the last one is just tips and tricks and some things you should keep in mind about your actual writing. For me, I didn't really practice the TSA portion. What I did practice was outlining, and I think that's super important. So in order to do this, I'm just gonna go give you guys a sample. So this is the October 31st, 2018 paper that they put on the Cambridge admissions site. So we're just gonna use that. So say we have this paper in front of us, right? I'm gonna walk you through what I would pick and why I would pick it, or why I would pick and not pick some. We have, is humanism a religion? Should journalists be only allowed to follow their profession if licensed to do so, like medical doctors? Should a government impose a legal maximum ratio between the highest and lowest pay of individuals and companies? Do non-human animals have opinions? Do they have beliefs? Immediately, as you read them, you should be kind of getting a sense of what the spectrum of opinions would look like. So I guess this is in the outline portion as well. So you kind of have a spectrum, right? Of course you can argue, you can tell me that there's so many different answers, there's so many different potential ways to look at this, but you need to build a spectrum to some point, and then you need to cover maybe just this section, and maybe mention this section or something like that. You gotta pick your portion because you're not going to be able to cover all your perspectives. First thing I think you should figure out when you're looking at the prompts is what area are you more comfortable writing about. So for me, is humanism a religion? No. I don't know anything about religion. I didn't do ethics as part of my TOK. I didn't do religion. So for me, that's a big no. And also, in looking at the question itself, is humanism a religion? So what do you have? You have yes, right? You have no, and you have everything in between. So then you would argue you had to argue what the definition of humanism, what time period are you talking about? Are you talking about humanism in what sense, its impact in society? If it is a religion, what are its impacts? If it's not a religion, what are its impacts? How would you define it? All of that stuff. And you also have to bring in objections. And this really aids in bringing in the critical thinking part, which is talking about and including objections. And then your logic would be your evidence, right? And then open perspectives, I think, is how well you can integrate your spectrum. So people could say that's kind of similar as including objections, but the thing you need to remember is that the TSA writing session is asking you to answer the question. So you can't just present 5 different answers and not pick one. There's something very different between having a spectrum of answers and just bringing up every single objection there is to your answer. The second one is, should journalists only be allowed to follow their profession if licensed to do so, like medical doctors? So then I feel the tension here, or the outline spectrum, would be kind of things when it's maybe out of their purview. Should they still do it because of moral reasons, or just personal beliefs, or all of that? So it's about the ethics of a profession versus the license that will allow you to execute it. So that's my first thought. I've never seen these prompts before, by the way. It's my first time looking at them. So that would kind of be the tension. Inherent parts of one's profession versus the license that will allow you to kind of exhibit your freedom and exhibit yourself and your personal beliefs in your profession. Like medical doctors, right? It's called, what is it called? It starts with an H. Is it Hannibal's code? Is it Hippocampus's code? Something like that. It's the ethic code that binds them that they have to prioritize saving patients' lives. And sometimes in tricky situations that becomes questionable. The third one is, should a government impose a legal maximum ratio between the highest and lowest pay of individuals and companies? So there are many perspectives you can take on this, right? You can go the whole gender equality route. You can say that highest and lowest pay of individuals is heavily tied to like gender discrimination. These are the facts. You can also say though, like the theoretical implications of having a maximum ratio is inherently restrictive to like the company's like operations. Maybe like, can you imagine there's a fixed ratio between how much you can pay the CFO and how much you can pay the janitor? Would the government have to like differentiate via company? Like what if it's a tech company where, you know, non-tech people and business admin people, there's a big gap between them? Or it's like a completely online company where everyone is kind of paid, you know, similarly because there's no brick and mortar like fixed overhead to take care of it. Like there are a lot of factors here. So I would say if you're like a more like econ heavy, you read more about like society and like income gap, go ahead and write this one. I don't really like to write this because I feel like it's very difficult to, again, argue for like one thing or two things and then bring in other opinions. I feel like I will just end up arguing one thing. So the last one we have is 4, do non-human animals have opinions? Do they have beliefs? So this is the one I'm probably going to pick. Why? It's actually a personal reason. Is because when I was in 10th grade, I once did a debate topic, so I kind of know the case like inside and out. That's why I would pick this. But say I didn't, right? Then how would I look at this? Again, it's the yes and no thing, right? But what we need to consider then is how do we quantify impact, right? How do we bring impact into the question? Because obviously, like you could argue that the reason why they have beliefs is because I'm not a bio person, but I'm sure like they have like heuristics and neural pathways and there's no way for us to determine if they don't have thoughts and therefore whatever. Or you can say, what is the impact? What is the immediate effect of assuming or thinking that they have beliefs or not? Does it matter if they have beliefs? Say it does, right? Then what implications are there? There's so many different directions for you to go. So you really need to define like where you want to hit. Say they have opinions or they don't have beliefs. It doesn't matter to me because 1, it's unattainable. Then I have a whole paragraph about like we will never be able to know. And then second one is that even if we did know, this is what would happen. And even if we didn't know, the same thing would happen. However, you can bring in objections. And however, you could also say all of this stuff, right? All right, next up is how do you write 2 pages, like 2 sides of an A4 page in 30 minutes? You have a maximum of around 1,200 words. Realistically speaking, you're not going to be able to write 1,000 words in 30 minutes. Break the 30 minutes down. Say in the first minute, you have your topic, you have your outline, you know what you're going to write, everything's, you know, labeled and figured out. And then you spend like what, 10 minutes on a body paragraph maybe? Say you have 2 of these, right? That's already 20 minutes. Then what, you have an intro with like a relatively important thesis that you need to formulate. You only get 5 minutes for that. Say you're a genius, you write a really dumb 1-sentence conclusion. Say your conclusion takes you like what, 2 minutes. I like to keep another 5 minutes at the end to edit. And let's face it, who's gonna outline in the first minute? Now I'm gonna tell you how I would structure my time. Keep in mind that this is also very pertaining to my personal writing style and what my like pros and cons and how I write. And if I want to write a full-length paragraph, maybe like 250 words-ish, it might take me less than 10 minutes. And so with that in mind, I usually give myself like 5 minutes. But so what would my outline include? My thesis, my main points, right? Like my like point 1, 2, 3, maybe usually there's no 3. Maybe the 3 is like an objection. And then I will also figure out my spectrum along with my thesis. I want to figure out what I want to mention and what I want to focus on. You figure out evidence. And then for me, this is hard because it's like, where do you get this information? And you want to show diversity in evidence. So, because obviously they don't expect you to have to memorize statistics, so you gotta demonstrate what? That like you read the news. Basic knowledge about like events. So this is the goal here, just demonstrate that you read the news, you're aware, this is what they want to see in PPE candidates, right? If you have that knowledge, go ahead and show it off. Great, so you have events and history, not really statistics. I think quotes are very useful. And then you have personal stories, right? Like personal anecdote. I'm always quite apprehensive about using this one because I always think it's not the most convincing. But in a time like this, if you really don't have anything, I think it's fine. Alright, so this is how I would like outline. This is what I would outline in 5 minutes. And then I'll have my like just like point 1, point 2, usually they would be larger paragraphs, and I'll have a small point 3, and I have like a 1 to 2 sentence like conclusion. And that's it. So we have what, 25 minutes left. This will take me what, 2 minutes maximum. because it's only 1 to 2 sentence conclusion. So today we have 7 minutes. We have what, like 22 minutes left. So we need to split 22 among these. So I'll probably do like 8, 8, and then like 5-ish. I know it doesn't add up, but I'll have maybe a couple minutes at the end, like 1 to 2 minutes to edit. Because as you can probably tell, my handwriting is really, really bad. I write fast, but it's also very illegible. My personal trick, by the way, for solving that is take a pen that doesn't flow really quickly, that flows like steadily, but not super quickly, which forces you to kind of write slower. Editing is really important. I will like cross out words or like erase words that I think are too illegible and rewrite them. So on the actual language, a couple of things I just want to mention is that you have to keep in mind that whoever's reading this is probably reading like a million, like thousands of these, right? And so when you're writing, be sure to keep your writing like concise and succinct, yet at the same time fully demonstrating that you have like apt English ability. What you need to find is a balance between being clear, short, concise, and at the same time also sophisticated. The way I do this very quickly is 2 things. Okay, two things, very simple. 1, don't use stupid vocabulary. I'm not saying, go be like an SAT book, but don't, like, if this idea is a good idea, don't call it a good idea. Call it like distinctively effective. Don't fill up your essay with like really intense words that are like littered here and there, but try to overall increase the level of sophistication your vocabulary has. This, however, can also be aided by syntax. And syntax is just like your sentence structure, right? So make sure to write multi-clause sentences and vary your sentence lengths. Does not mean that each of your sentences have to be super long, but know how to balance a compound sentence with like a more simple sentence. Point number 2 is get to the point. Don't dilly-dally. You might have some big reveal. You don't have time for that. Don't build up your writing and then reveal it. Just say it at the very beginning and then prove it. That's the way I think to think about it. Basically, the way you should be structuring your essay is like a tree diagram, right? You have this big idea or like this big subject. You have your multiple points. Sometimes maybe they relate to each other, right? Then you just talk about them more. And then most importantly though, you need to think about them as breaking it down into different structures. So like the most basic one would be like AREA. Assertion, reasoning, evidence, and analysis, right? Maybe some people did AEC, assertion, evidence, commentary. Some people did ARE, assertion, reasoning, evidence. Like there's so many variations. Last part is just a couple of tips and tricks. 1, don't hesitate. Pick a topic and stick to it. This is when practice comes around. How? Give yourself a timer, 30 minutes, right? And then pick a random TSA paper. Like it doesn't matter what year it is. Just pick a random TSA paper and then force yourself to like pick between 3 questions and then just start writing or outlining it. What I did is that I didn't have the time to like write 30 minutes of stuff repeatedly. That would be a couple hours each day. I also didn't want to, so I just practiced, it's gone, but I just practiced the 5-minute outline. My second big tip for you is write it and don't finish it. I told you guys about like splitting it up into different paragraphs, right? I didn't do this for the TSA because I actually had a decent amount of, I actually had time left over, but I did do this for the SAT writing. I will write like the big assertion and a little bit of the reasoning and like 1 piece of evidence. And then for each paragraph, and I'll like leave some space in the middle. And then I would not write the commentary analysis part. Wrote all of my paragraphs first, and I wrote my conclusion, and then I went back and like slotted in the commentary parts. Because even if you don't have them, they don't take away too much from your essay. But if you're missing your like 3rd paragraph, or if like your first 2 paragraphs are huge and your 3rd paragraph is tiny, that's an immediate like bad impression on your essay. That's basically it. So if you guys have further questions, go ahead and comment down below. But I really do think that doing well in the TSA writing section is just 1, a combination of how quickly you can think, and 2, how quickly you can translate those thoughts into words, and 3, how quickly you can control your words to like make it sound, like straightforward and like concise and all of that. If you want to see more Oxford videos, please comment what you want them to be. I'm pretty much done with Oxford at this point. I only have the how I got into Oxford PPE big summary stats video that I need to make, and other than that, It's per request, so go wild. All right, I'll see you guys